episode 191 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. It's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. First off, the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you today, Richard?
Doing very well. What's up, Seth?
Not much. I've had a wonderful weekend playing Guilds of Ravnica. I am just so hyped. This is like the best time of the year in the Magic world. Standard rotation, new sets, new limited. But before we get into that, we have another co-host, Chris Van Meter. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing good. Much like you, I'm excited for Guilds of Ravnica.
Yeah, I am super hyped about that, and that's going to be a decent chunk of our podcast for today. We're going to talk Guilds of Ravnica, particularly kind of like pre-release / limited type stuff. We're going to talk about some MTG Arena. We didn't get to it last week, but we're in open beta. There was a big streaming event, so kind of a bunch of Arena stuff. Mention the BNR announcement briefly, and then, of course, hit up all of your fish mail. But before we get into that, a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's show, which is spikesacademy.com, the world's first Magic the Gathering e-learning academy. They have some sweet online courses from some of the best players in Magic's history, like Pauler Vito Dama-DeRosa, and we just found out this week a new addition in Reed Duke, who's going to be doing a modern course over on spikesacademy.com. So check them out, spikesacademy.com, get 10% off with the code GOLDFISH, and you can learn more by checking out their Twitter, spikes_academy. So anyway, with the sponsorship stuff out of the way, let's talk some fun stuff. Guilds of Ravnica pre-release. So, did either of you actually play pre-release events this weekend?
I played pseudo pre-release. I played pre-release on Arena, which I learned is not the same as actual pre-release because you don't get the guild seeded boosters. But I played sealed. It's incredibly expensive on Arena. It's best of one, seven wins or 3 losses. And I had mixed results. I think I went 6 wins, 7 wins, 2 wins, 1 win, 3 wins. It's like all over the place. Sometimes it goes great. Sometimes it goes horribly awry. So I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. And I think everyone else on Arena is trying to figure it out as well. But Arena being released at the same time as paper pre-release is pretty cool. And if you can't make it out to your local game store, which I couldn't this weekend, you can play online.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing, and I'm very happy for it, and I hope that this is the model they use moving forward. It was really cool being able to like play with the cards like a normal pre-release, but not have to like physically go into a game store. Even though I work at a game store, so it's kind of weird for me to say that, but I just had like a ton of stuff that I had to do this weekend, but I was still able to play through 2 full pre-releases on Arena. I got 6 wins in one and 7 wins in the other, so I was able to make a little bit, have a little fun, and Mythics are good, man. They're good online, just as good as they are in paper.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I did a pre-release on Magic Online, actually, which one of the weird upsides of that is they actually do have the seeded boosters on Magic Online if you do a friendly event, so you can get the actual pre-release feel, at least a little more so there. But then I played a lot of Constructed. I've just been chomping at the bit for Standard, so I spent some of the time that I could have spent pre-releasing working on some sweet new Standard decks. So anyway, what was your impression of Guilds of Ravnica sealed, I guess? There weren't drafts up on either digital client, right? You couldn't draft on Arena this weekend.
No draft.
Okay, so how was sealed for Guilds of Ravnica?
So cards that single-handedly won me the game. The 4-mana 6/6 hexproof thing. Absolutely ridiculous because sometimes your opponent makes you discard on turn 1, and that's just a free win. And other times when you play it on curve, you know, your removal in limited is not as mana efficient, so actually having to pay 2 and then, you know, trying to use 5 mana removal, like, you are so behind. So any game where you get that 4 mana 6/6 in your hand, it's ridiculous. I like the Surveil deck. Surveil looks very powerful. The Dimir bug, it's like a 1/1 menace, and when you Surveil, you get a +1/+1 counter. I had a deck with the Sprite, which whenever it attacks, you Surveil. So, you know, 2 flyers very early, and they're just growing, and you're backing that up with, you know, blue and black Surveil cards. It's ridiculous. So the guilds feel very powerful. All of the double-colored guild cards are pretty good. They're just really hard to cast, but they're very impactful. And yeah, I don't know. The guilds feel very guildsy. It felt very fun. And so far, I've had fun playing all the color combinations, even though I can't win in the more aggressive ones. I just don't know how to build those decks.
Yeah, so I had a lot of fun, and there were a few takeaways that I noticed really early. So the first one is that the lockets are absurd, and you certainly want to be playing your lockets. Like, the format isn't like hyper aggressive. Like, there can be a very aggressive Boros deck, but like there are a lot of like small death touchers, and every color has like a lot of good blockers or 2-drops or playable 1-drops. So the lockets are just very, very good. And the rares and mythics are just absurd. Like, there's just some insane mythics or some insane rares. Try and play as many of them as you can. Like, there's a lot of guild gates. You have District Guide. There's the land enchantment. Lockets can help you splash. So just try and play as many powerful cards as you can, because everybody's going to have a lot of powerful cards because the rares are just all so good. But one card in particular that made a huge impact in my games is in my Sultai deck. I had the land that is a Shimmering Grotto, but if you use that colored mana to pay for a multicolored creature, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So like being able to turn my 2/3s into 3/4s. I even had the flying hexproof death touch creature that I just made it a 4/4 with that land, and all of my opponents just conceded every time I played it. Also, the 1/1 death toucher that has lure. If you make it a 2/2, you just actually get to kill 2 creatures because they have to block with all of their stuff. So that land was very, very good, and I expect to try and play it as often as I can, whether it be sealed or booster draft.
What do you think about Constructed? Is there any chance we see, Boros has a lot of multicolored creatures. We saw the colorless one that kind of did the same thing for colorless creatures. Ruins of Oran Reef or something showed up in some Eldrazi decks in Standard. Is there any chance that card catches on in Standard?
I don't think so. Point? Maybe when you have all 10 shocks and the mana isn't bad. Right now, there are some decks that the mana is just atrocious. And even in Boros, yes, you have a lot of multicolored creatures, but if you're playing your 2-drops on turn 3, then you're just falling behind and not doing what your deck wants to do.
Yeah, I guess that is a good point. Yeah, so my sealed pool was really bad. I had the classic 2 rare land, 2 this is a good modern sideboard card, Unmoored Ego rare sealed pool. So my one good card was Bounty of Might. So I built a Golgari deck that splashed just a little bit of blue, and I just felt outpowered in a lot of the matchups. The deck felt good and it could grind, but then eventually my opponent would find some massive bomb that my deck just didn't have, and yeah. So overall my record wasn't good, but it still seemed really fun. I was really impressed with Izzet actually in the people that I played against. The Izzet decks looked really powerful, especially the blue guild mages stuck out. The Dimir one and the Izzet one both seemed like they were better than I thought. When I saw these guild mages, I was like, all right, these are fine, but I don't think they're as good as our past guild mages, which a lot of times were auto first picks in limited and even showed up in Constructed a little bit. But I was impressed with the blue guild mages in specific, so it seemed really fun. But then I just fell down the Standard rabbit hole and started building Standard decks and having fun with that. So I only did one event and did not post a very good record, but it still seemed like a cool format, and I'm going to be excited to try it out again with Draft. I think there's in Sealed, there's just that variance. In Draft, it's really hard to get a bad draft pool because you're picking from everyone's packs, and everyone should have at least a reasonable deck. In Sealed, you can just get that pool where you're oh no, this the Richard pool, I think we call it. Don't you always get those pools, Richard?
I always get them, but you just play enough of them. You just play enough that you eventually get a good pool. What did you guys think of the new mechanics? Jumpstart, I felt, was actually a lot weaker than I thought it would be, and maybe the problem was I put too many Jumpstart cards in my deck, but between trying to make land drops to actually turn on your lockets and having expensive finishers, you just didn't have that many cards to throw away. So it's not flashback at all. It's just a little incremental advantage sometimes, and maybe you can put 1 to 2 cards in your deck, but you can't just fill your deck with Jumpstart cards. You just run out of gas so quickly. So I felt that was very surprising because I thought Jumpstart would be better going in.
Yeah, so Direct Current It's just like obviously the best jumpstart card. But I felt that Surveil and Mentor like really outshined all of the other mechanics. Like, yes, Convoke is good and you can like get onto the board early, double spell fairly early on. Undergrowth was just like kind of meh, but like Surveil was so good, like being able to like find the cards you want, triggering your like Surveil Matters cards, even for like random Undergrowth or Jumpstart cards that you might have in your deck that you're playing just because they're good cards by themselves. But Mentor in particular is very powerful because the ability just feels like it's stapled on to a lot of cards without changing like how they designed the card. So like I would just play a 5/2 for 4 anyway, but it also like pumps my smaller creatures permanently like as the course of the game goes on. Like almost all of my losses in the sealed were just to very good Mentor decks.
Yeah, it's in some ways it's similar to energy. Like a lot of the energy cards felt like that. Like, oh, this is already a playable card, and then it just happens to produce some energy, which, well, that makes it even better. In Mentor, they kind of build it the same way. I don't think it's anywhere near as busted and constructed as energy ended up being. I think for me, Jumpstart is a mechanic that I think you're right about limited. I think it's actually better in constructed, where you can build around it a little bit more and take more advantage of like the spells matters theme and take more advantage of your graveyard. So I feel like it's better in constructed than it is in sealed. And for me, I played an Undergrowth deck and I came away feeling like Undergrowth could be good, but I think it's one of the hardest mechanics to build around because, like with Surveil's just good. Mentor, it's just good, especially when it's already on creatures that are good if they didn't have Mentor. With Undergrowth, you need to have, like, this right mixture of your Glowspore Shamans and so forth to, like, get things in your graveyard, and the right mixture of Undergrowth, like, payoffs, and if your sealed pool doesn't hit both of those, then you're left with this really kind of, like, underpowered, clunky deck, because you have, like, 4-mana 0/0s, which can be great if you have 10 creatures in your graveyard. It's, like, the best card in your deck, but if you don't have the right payoffs and the right enablers, Golgary's a tough guild to make work, I think.
All right, rules pop quiz, guys. This happened to me, and I don't know if it's a bug or if it's as intended. Say I have a 3/2 creature, and my opponent plays the Dimir card that gives you -2/-4, and I play Invert on my creature, which swaps its power and toughness. What should happen?
I think your creature gets -4, right?
No.
It should die, right?
So the way that the invert works is
No.
it's similar to About Face. So anything that would pump like what it was before gets flipped. So what ends up happening is the -2/-4 from the whatever that card is turns into a -4/-2.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. So I thought I punted because I thought it was -4/-2. I'm like, okay, I'll just flip my creature and survive. And then I cast the card. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't read this card correctly at all. But then my creature survived at -2 and 1, and I was very confused. So the flip also affects to things that resolve later, or I guess they all resolve at the same time. Is that how it works? Is this some kind of layer things?
Because there's a Pauper deck where that's built around this combo actually. So you Inside Out, I think the actual one is in Pauper, but whatever, yeah. But basically, you can switch the power and toughness, and then Tireless Tribe, you can discard a card to give it +0/+4. But after you Inside Out, which is the same exact ability as Invert, then every time you discard a card, you're giving it +4/+0. So then you just one-shot kill someone, make it unblockable or whatever. But it doesn't really matter when it resolves because of how the weird layers and so forth work. So you can do that for the rest of the turn, basically.
Uh-huh.
It's weird.
It is very confusing. Yes, it is. It is not intuitive because I always think like it shouldn't work that way, but then it works that way and I die.
Yep. Most people don't think it be like it is.
So, any other Guilds of Ravnica pre-release thoughts before we move on to our next topic?
Somebody touched on it earlier, but the guild mages are way better than I gave them credit for. So I expect them to be very high picks in draft.
Yeah, I was impressed with the guild mages as well. I also was impressed with the Is It Split card. That the back half is like a really expensive X spell that deals X damage and draws X cards. The format seemed grindy enough that I lost to that card multiple times, like X6, X8. So it seems like a fairly slow and grindy format, which I wasn't sure of because a lot of people were talking about Boros being the best deck and it's just going to be fast and run over people. But in my experience, at least, the sealed format was pretty slow and grindy, and you could get away with playing some big, splashy, expensive stuff and make it good.
It also seems like Deadweight is the mythic common in the set, so I expect that to be a first pick in draft.
Yeah, I'm excited for draft. I think in the digital world, both on Magic Online and Magic Arena, by the time you listen to the podcast, I believe drafts will be live. So if you're interested in checking out drafts, you can find them on Magic Online or Magic Arena. Speaking of Magic Arena, that's our second topic for today. So we kind of missed this last week. We were busy talking about other stuff, but in the last week, Magic Arena went into open beta, which I guess is not technically official release, but it's kind of official release because you don't need a beta code to get in. Anyone can download Magic Arena and play it. They had this huge streaming event to kick it off and to kick off Guilds of Ravnica with like 300, I think, streamers. And then Arena actually like beat Hearthstone that day as far as people watching it on Twitch, and now everyone's talking about it. So what are your thoughts on Magic Arena? Let's see if we can break this down a little bit easier. Both of you play Arena. You already mentioned you were playing it. What was your impression of Magic Arena pre-releases for Guilds of Ravnica? And then we can kind of go from there through the rest of Arena.
It was okay. I now that I think about it, I'm disappointed we didn't get the seeded pack, but we also lost out on a rare. Right? Because normally you get your 6 packs, you have your 6 rares, and then you have your pre-release pack thing with your promo, which we didn't get on Arena, which is weird. I don't see why they couldn't just give us a random rare there. But other than that, it was okay. I mean, it's just Arena. Best of ones is a bit tough. I played one release event. My first release event, I had 3 wins and I lost, right? So that means I just played 6 games total. So it felt super short. It was like 30 minutes. I'm like, I learned nothing about this format. I gotta queue up again, right? So it's a little different. It's really expensive. So it's not expensive in absolute terms, but if you go 7 wins, you get 2,200 gems back, and it costs you 2,000 gems to enter. So at 7 wins, at maxing out, you only just make 200 gems. So it is very hard to quote unquote go infinite. What ends up happening is you get 9 packs out of that, right? 6 from your pool and then 3 from winning. So that's how they offset it. But if you're not interested in packs, it's just very expensive to grind release events. And they had this problem before with the competitive drafts and things like that. But I feel like the pre-release payouts just kind of continue that trend where if you wanted to play all weekend, you got to be really good, or you got to start sinking money to it and building a constructed card collection, whether you like it or not, right? Because I have nothing, like, you can't just trade your mythic wild cards back for packs or gold or something to keep going like you could on Moto, right? Moto, what people would do is win the packs, sell the packs back, or use the packs to re-enter and then keep going, and you can go for a pretty long time. So that's just the one thing that they never addressed going from closed to open beta. Like, limited only players can't really play. You have to play both to properly utilize the Arena economy.
That really drives me crazy.
I wish there was some conversion or some method where you could utilize unopened packs of whatever the format is to actually play in the queues for that format.
So the thing is, like, it's really simple. All they have to do is have the payout be the same, but have it be in gold. Like, because gold buys packs. So if they just paid you out in gold, then you have the choice. You can use your gold to enter another event if you want to, or you could just buy the packs that you would have gotten if they paid it out that way. So it's really, that part of it really frustrates me, how it just feels like it's set up in like this predatory way to like force you to put money into it, when Magic Online, it's expensive. I'm not arguing that, but it is set up in a way where you can keep playing and use your winnings to keep playing. So that's one of my pet peeves about Arena right now. That and the 5th card issue are my 2 things with the economy that still just drive me a little bit crazy. What did you think? Did you have fun playing the pre-release events there, Chris? Is it a good proxy for going out to your local game store on pre-release weekend?
So I view it as like a completely separate experience. Like, you don't get the same of like a best of 3 and playing face to face, but it's perfect if you just like want to sit down and play some Magic and have fun with the new cards. So like, I learned a little bit. I wouldn't just use it for like a Grand Prix preparation, but it's a perfect supplement to like help you get those reps in and learn cards and interactions and just like get that Magic fix.
I gotta ask you, both of you. We talked about pre-releases. Richard played Magic Arena. Chris played Magic Arena. I played Magic Online and Magic Arena. None of us went out to our local game stores. Is there any concern that this is a bad thing? Like, if we all skipped going to pre-release because we could just sit home and eat popcorn in our underwear in pre-release, like, is this a bad thing for local game stores in any way?
Probably a little bit. You go ahead, Chris.
I feel a big part of that is just like the novelty of it. This is the first time you could do it, so people are going to take advantage of it. I think that the number of people who would like prefer to go to a game store but sit down and play Arena instead, like, I don't think that's what's going to end up being impacted, right? So it's like the people that were, well, the big chunk of people that played Arena this weekend instead of going to a game store likely weren't going to go to a game store anyway, and they played Arena because they had, I had 3 hours to play Magic spread out over the entirety of the day, so I got to play in a pre-release event because I could sit down for 10 minutes and play a match and then go do my errands, then sit down for an hour and play a couple matches and then go take care of something else, and so on and so forth. So I think that like it's capturing the audience that wasn't already planning on going to the local game store.
So it didn't necessarily like eat into the people going to pre-releases. This maybe just had more people able to play pre-release events.
Yeah, I mean, I have to imagine that it's a non-zero number of people that would have gone to their local game store but decided to stay home and play Arena because it's convenient and new and they wanted to try it out. But I don't think that number is very large, and I think that those people will probably just go to their game store for the next pre-release because they got to see what Arena was about and they like to play face-to-face.
So we are officially in open beta. What do y'all feel like about that? So we kind of went into open beta without anything super crazy happening. Like, Sealed was added for the pre-release events, but it's not like there was a whole new client or a whole new deck builder or any like huge changes when we switch from closed beta to open beta. What's your thoughts on Arena being an open beta now? Is it ready? What needs to improve? What are we happy with?
This is it. Like, I don't expect anything big to happen. They might change how the vault slightly works, but whenever they do this, they never change your total rewards, right? Your expected value or whatever remains the same. They just kind of shift whether you're getting gold, gems, wild cards, whatever. So I think the economy is here to stay. The gameplay is more or less here. They'll probably add new boards. They'll probably add new, I don't know what they're calling them, like the Hearthstone brawls, like the different format every week that you can try out. But I think in general, the game is quote unquote done. So I wouldn't expect any massive changes going out. Like maybe the auto tapper works correctly or something, and just small changes like that. And it's just time to start grinding your collections because they're not going to wipe it anymore, and see how expensive it really is to play standard, and see, how easy is it to adapt to the meta. If, after Pro Tour a new deck list gets posted, that's when people will start feeling the pain, right? Did you waste your wild cards? Right now you can't play the new standard deck unless you buy more gems, right? So I think that's when we're going to start seeing the real crunch. And, Guilds of Ravnica just released, everyone rotated, we're all starting from scratch, so we're all building it up again. And then when Pro Tour hits, we're going to see the real impact of the economy. That's when we want to change decks and pivot really fast based on what's happening in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely happy with the economy. I think that they should have kind of like solved this 5th card issue before. Well, I think they should be solved before they're like are done with their beta. But like, let's face it, like games sit in open beta now for almost the entirety of the lifespan of the game. Like, what's the next step for it, right? To like officially release the game. But like, you're in open beta, it's like already released. But I would like to see like some work with the economy be done, because I don't think that it's very good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The economy has some issues. I feel like, and to give Arena credit, they have come a long way in the last year, and things have been improving. The gameplay is really fun. There are a couple of economy things that we kind of talked about. I'd like to see payouts more in gold and less in packs, which especially helps limited players. The 5th card issue, not sure why they didn't do something with that before going into open beta, especially since they said they were going to do something back in July, I think, was their initial, like, we're going to do something now, and it's been a few months with no changes. So those were the big ones. I also think there's still, like, some fringe issues with the clock. I posted a little clip on my Twitter the other day of me trying to crack treasure tokens as my timer is just, like, burning out in front of me, and I'm trying to add mana to cast the spell that would be the game. So I like the big flashy animations. I've really come around on them, because I was an animation skeptic going into Arena, but I really like the big flashy ones, and I think they add a lot to the game. But some of the little quality of life ones, like, it doesn't really need an animation every time I crack a treasure token. Please, like, just let me make my mana Arena. So I feel like there's little things that could be tuned up. Now that we're a whole year into it, what do you think this means for Magic Online? Over the past year, we've had this, like, roller coaster of conversations, Richard, where it's like, oh my god, Magic Online, it's killing it, it's done. And then I'd be like, actually, no, I think Magic Online, they're going to support both. They're not trying to kill Magic Online. Now that we've hit open beta, where are your thoughts on the future of Magic Online in its role in Magic Digital?
I don't know. I think Wizards is actually trying to run all 2 digital clients at paper at the same time. I don't know what this means. Like, it'll be supported for the future, but you can already see they're putting so much effort and resources into promoting Arena, and they're not doing the same for Magic Online. So it's just gonna stay as is and be stagnant and eventually fall off. Now, when it falls off, who knows? But, you know, there was no Guilds of Ravnica Magic Online streamer event. Right, we didn't have any such things. Everyone was streaming Arena, so that's where all their focus is. And I still believe eventually they're going to put everything onto Arena. And I think eventually coverage, or, you know, if you don't replace the Pro Tour, they will have a Pro Tour level event for digital Magic players. So eventually coverage, or some form of coverage, will go onto Arena as well. So I think Magic Online's days are limited. It's probably going to be there for Modern and for Legacy and Vintage until those things are supported. Like, they're starting to bring things over, like Momir and things like that are over already. And, you know, Brawl, they can bring over Standard Pop or things like that. They'll do on Arena, and they're not going to innovate on Magic Online. I
mean, the model of keeping both just can't be sustainable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what my gut says, but like, if Magic Online and Arena are both like making enough money to like sustain themselves, then maybe we see it happening. But I mean, I just feel like it can't be sustainable, and at some point, Magic Online will just have to go, and everything will just be on Arena.
I'm skeptical that we'll ever see Legacy or Vintage or maybe even Modern on Arena. I'm just, I don't know. I feel like they have done a lot of work to make Arena the best, like, new player client possible, and I feel like the changes they would have to make to, like, the timer system, to the way the stack works, like, real fundamental aspects of the game, which work really well if your goal is to, like, hey, I can auto tap my lands and play a standard game in 5 minutes, which is, I think, what their primary goal is. I feel like the changes you'd have to make to really have older formats function on Arena would make standard and that new player fun, flashy, Hearthstonean experience worse. So I don't know. I guess that's my thinking, is I'm not actually sure that they are planning on doing that. I mean, maybe eventually they'll get to that point, but I still think that it's going to be a very long-term thing if it ever happens at all.
Are you saying you don't want to open a second copy of Black Lotus on Magic Arena? What about the 5th?
Oh my, that would be the worst beat.
Eighth of a wild card?
Yeah.
Nice Black Lotus.
I don't know why Wizards wants to fragment their player base. Like, why do you want Arena to be new player friendly and then all the experienced people must go to 1990s Magic Online? Like, that's just weird. You know, part of the appeal of Magic is I can play against the top players, and due to RNG, I can actually take a game off of them, right? That doesn't help me if I'm playing on Arena and LSV and all the pros are playing on Magic Online, right? It doesn't help that I grind my way to the top of the Arena ladder, then must throw away my collection and rebuild it on Magic Online to continue climbing up, right? Like, it's just weird that they're trying this, and like Chris said, it's just not sustainable, like, from a organizational perspective. Like, you can't have two teams writing software that's, you know, the same thing. You're just doing everything twice. And in the long term, like, it's just a waste of time and effort. And you can imagine what happens when there's complicated mechanics and you got to implement them in both systems and you got to split your resources, and then you get all the moto bugs that we get today, right? Like, it's just so difficult. So I think they're actually trying to do it, though, and I don't think it's going to end up well. I think eventually they're going to have to suck it up and, like, put everything onto Arena.
Like, do you think Legacy could work on Arena? Or are you rebuilding the client from the ground up to be able to support a format that's played by 1% of the player base or something?
I mean, all you got to do is just add a timer, right? It's not terrible. I mean, you got to add all the cards, and then you got to switch from their rope timer to
a real timer.
You know, a rope timer that works, or, you know, a chess clock, right? Like, as long as you can combo.
Oh, but remember, right? You got, like, the order of your graveyard matters, and, like, there's so many weird things if you go back through 25 years of Magic. Maybe it would just go smoothly. I don't know.
You could just change the rules too.
Oh no! Oh, that's the last thing.
Like, if you play with older sets, the order of the graveyard matters, but when you play with newer sets, it doesn't, right?
Oh,
like,
okay.
You know,
okay.
like they changed the rules to make things easier. So you know, they could actually just change the rules.
Oh, I thought you meant the paper rules. Like, we'll errata this card so it works better on on Arena.
What they'll do is they'll just kind of support both clients for X amount of years until they can go, Vintage is dead.
Yeah.
Legacy is dead. Modern is dead. We have Standard and this other non-rotating format based off of what's available on Arena. And then Magic Online can just be gone. And if people want to keep playing those formats, they can play their physical cards. And that's just what Arena is. Like, digital is the future. Like, that's what they're going to be doing. And, like, I don't know how else you make that work outside of supporting two clients, which just doesn't seem sustainable.
Well, before we move on to our fish mail and whatnot, the other Arena news of the week was they did this huge streamer event. So 300 streamers beat Hearthstone for the day. So that was kind of one aspect of it. The other aspect that was a little controversial was some of the Hearthstone streamers were sort of awkward choices for a Magic event. People that were, like, banned from Magic. Like, is it Reynard? Is he the Hearthstone streamer that was banned? Was invited to the event. What did you guys make of that big event and the people invited to that event?
I think it was fine. So for one day, I think it was like 26,000 streamers or something. We beat out Hearthstone. And then the next day, we got back to our paltry, like, 2,000 versus 26,000 Hearthstone. But for one day, it was glorious. And it shows, you know, Wizards is trying to do something. As far as the Reynad situation, Wizards didn't invite him because he formerly cheated at at Magic. They invited him because he runs a huge esports organization. He is one of the most popular Hearthstone personalities and things like that. So that's why they invited him. And apparently they're willing to overlook the bad blood between the two, because it wasn't he was just banned. They had some feud on social media and things like there was some back and forth, right? So Wizards was willing to overlook that and say, hey, you know, you run a huge esports organization. You're an important member of Hearthstone. We want you to stream our game. And apparently he also agreed, because he also, you know, was very bitter towards Magic because it ruined his career or whatever. But it turned out to be very good for him, because now he's very rich in the Hearthstone world. But it is what it is. He's important because he's a big esports figure, not because he cheated in Magic. It's not like that was his only claim to fame.
So I think that there were some very, very good things that came out of this event. In particular, Brian Kilber is like streaming Magic Arena even like at the non-sponsored time and talking about looking at Grand Prix to go to try and play some Magic. So anything that they can do to get Kilber's attention back is a huge win for Magic because he has a huge audience, and I think that helps. Also, there's just like a ton of other content creators and streamers that they had that just helps gets eyes on the game, which is awesome. As far as the whole Reynad thing goes, I'm a little torn. Like, I think that we have this big thing happening in Magic right now where like cheating is very bad and it's on the forefront of people's minds, and a lot of people are, you know, of the stance that like, you know, when somebody does something like what Reynad was, you know, accused, and you know, when the investigation found it was correct that he added cards to his sealed deck at a Grand Prix, like that is cheating, right? So like, I'm not going to sit here and try and, you know, add different levels of bad to what the cheats are, but he was suspended for 18 months, decided to go off and do something else, you know, didn't have some nice things to say about Magic because he felt like that it wasn't accurate. That's neither here nor there, but the statement is that Wizards is going to look past that, and they are more interested in the bottom line and growing the game and tapping into the audience that Reynad has. So like that, as far as like for somebody who's like a faithful Magic the Gathering player, tournament competitor, clean player, like trying to strive to make the game as friendly and as accessible as possible, it's just like this weird tension where it's like he has a huge audience and can get new players into the game and is like doing good things now, but he did something very bad in the past, and a lot of people see that as a stain on Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, I think the event itself was very good. Like, we criticized Wizards a lot for some of their promotional stuff not going over that well, and I feel like this event was basically overwhelmingly a success. There were tons of people playing Magic. There were tons of people watching Magic. There was tons of people talking about it on Magic Twitterverse. So I feel like overall it was a very good promotional event, and I think they did a really good job with it. I do question why you have to invite the band from Magic Hearthstone streamer. Like, there's a lot of famous Hearthstone streamers. It seems like leaving the one that was banned in Magic and then trashed your game off the list. Like, if your goal is to have the Hearthstone audience, I don't know if you need that specific one streamer. You got Kibler, and you got Amaz, and you got Trump, and you got all these other huge Hearthstone streamers that it seems like maybe the value that you get out of that isn't worth the cost, especially since you could just like get the next Hearthstone streamer down the list, which probably isn't that huge of a deal. So I do question that one choice in specific, but I think it's a really cool event, and I hope they keep doing that. I think the early pre-release event on Arena and also on Magic Online, I think is really cool, that because it wasn't always like that. It used to be you had to wait until after paper releases to play the sets in digital form. So to see the sets actually coming out so early on digital, I think it's a great way to like generate hype for the set. Have these big events with tons of people are playing, talking about the set, and maybe that gets people out to their local game store a couple days later for the actual pre-release, or gets them to pick up a box. So I feel like despite the little bit of a weirdness with the one Hearthstone streamer Reynard, I think overall it was still a really good event, and I hope they keep doing it.
I think the best part about this is that you keep calling him Reynard.
What's his name?
Reynad.
Oh, Reynad. All right, whatever. I don't watch Hearthstone streams, and I
you wait
everything.
Because maybe his name will come up more often. Because he runs Tempo Storm, which is like, you know, a big Hearthstone team. It's a big esports organization. So part of the reason they chose him was not just because he's a streamer, but he runs, you know, esports thingies, which Wizards wants to get into. So
yeah, like one thing that I think could be really cool from it, like regardless of like Reynad's past with Magic, is that like he is initiated to it and he has built a successful company and he knows like what it takes, you know, from the game perspective to invest in having a team for it. Like, how cool would it be at some point to have like a Tempo Storm pro team playing Magic the Gathering? That'd be sick.
That would be super sweet. I got one more Arena question before we hit fish mail. So we are supposed to be getting the GP schedule for next year. the end of this week, on the 4th, I believe. They're doing a special stream to announce it. And I've been like keeping up, watching the streams where they've kind of been like announcing the announcement more or less. And they've said a few things that make me wonder if digital is going to be a part of the GP schedule next year, or at least some part of that level of the tournament scene. Are we expecting anything with Magic Arena when they make this announcement on Thursday, or is that premature and we're looking at a year or two in the future when they start having actual tournaments like that on Arena?
They'll have stations at the Grand Prix for you to try out Magic Arena. I can't imagine them saying like, oh, Grand Prix trials are now at Magic Arena, have at it. Like, I can't imagine them trying a large scale event right now, but maybe. I mean, maybe by the end of next year they could.
I could see something where they have like feature matches, where the feature matches are played on Arena, and that's how the coverage and casting is done. Because like they have deck lists, like they should be able to just like plug in deck lists for people to play. But my big hang up on that is misclicks suck. And it's like so easy to like navigate a game of Magic in paper to like make sure that things happen properly. But like if you misclick something, you can't just like call a judge and like try and fix a situation because you misclicked something. Like having dexterity be a part of the competition is something that was removed smartly a long time ago, and I would hate for that to be added back in.
Well, as a competitive player, what do you think about things like triggers and maintaining board state and things like that? Because on Magic, with digital, it's quite different than paper. So do you think difference?
I think that's great. I think that's perfect. Like trying to like utilize opponents making mistakes on things like that is a part of the game that I hate. So I'm very glad that that's not like a thing when you're playing digitally. But I still dislike like the dexterity errors from like misclicks or like maybe even accessibility issues, right? So like what if Brandon, like the guy whose mom helps him play, always plays Burn, top 8 at a Grand Prix, is like in a coverage match, it adds a whole nother level of accessibility if they're trying to utilize that as a way to have these feature matches.
So I don't think the client's to a point where you can run a high EV tournament on it yet. I think it would be extremely risky with just like the timer issues. People like, can you imagine a top 8 match where someone times out because their animations keep playing and they rope and they lose a match for thousands of dollars? Like, that's a thing that legitimately could happen in this standard format on Magic Arena right now. So I feel like that's not there. One thing that would really interest me immediately, though, would be if they could use digital to, assuming they're going to keep having limited part of these big events, but I think it would be awesome to actually watch the drafting. Like, watching the Pro Tour draft itself on digital is so much more digestible and so much more easier for the audience that could be a way to quote unquote fix limited for Pro Tours and events like that. So you can still play the matches in paper, give them the cards afterwards, so you don't have to deal with any client issues or misclicks. But it's just so much easier if you could just hook up 8 computers to each other and have the featured pod of a Pro Tour draft with all the picks laid out in a way you can scroll over the cards because of Twitch extensions and actually read them and see exactly what the player's seeing. So I feel like that could be an interesting first step towards integrating digital Magic into the scene.
So this is all I want, and it's very easy. So you launch the client, and instead of that big Guilds of Ravnica banner, you see Grand Prix such and such is happening now. Click here to watch on Twitch, right? And then when whoever wins it, you can see a panel there with their face. So-and-so won the Grand Prix with this deck, and then you can open and view the deck in the client. Like, that would be very easy integration that they could do to bring awareness to their pro scene, get regular people to actually know that Grand Prix exist and Pro Tours exist, and they can actually just view the winning deck list in the client, copy it, use their wild cards, and make the decks and things like that. So that would be very easy to do, or easier, I guess, than changing your Grand Prix formats for an integration between paper and digital.
Another option could be just like utilizing Arena for coverage similar to like how they do with chess or Go, right? Where like you have this paper game being played, but the digital projection of it is what people are able to watch, whether it's in client or streaming on Twitch. So like you could be at your computer with Arena pulled up and see like, you know, this Reed Duke versus LSV game happening on Arena, watching the plays happen, and it's a duplication of what's happening like in real life as they play.
Oh, that would be pretty interesting. I wonder how hard that would be to like have the draws be the same. I'm sure it's possible. Maybe you have to have someone sit there and like do it manually, but it would make it much easier to watch, even if that was like a secondary option along with normal paper coverage.
I'm sure it would take a ton of production value, but like once it gets figured out and solved and fixed, that'd be sweet. Like I would watch that all the time.
Yeah. Even as like a VOD, right? If you can't do it real time, just like the day after the tournament, just have all the games go up on Arena so you can view them, and someone can manually assemble the games. So it doesn't even have to be real time. It'd still be pretty good as a VOD.
Well, let's move on while we still have a few minutes left and answer some fish mail. Richard, take it away.
All right. If you have any questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail. First question. We didn't touch upon this, but there were no changes to the BNR. So this question is, what's the likelihood of Rampaging Ferocidon getting unbanned? We know the answer is it didn't get unbanned. And was there any reason to unban it?
No.
Also, I don't think they'll ever unban a card in Standard. I think that bannings are already too painful, that even if Ferocidon would be fine, I think it's just too much of a PR nightmare to unban it, even if you think it would be 100% fine in our current format.
Yep, it's already under the rug. That's where it's going to stay.
An opal. WotC treats LGSs as minor and individual. I think creating an association/cartel to pool buying power could upset the balance and reinforce their importance in the community. Thoughts?
You want to unionize LGSs? I don't know. That's
I mean, we hear shady cartel stories anyway, right? Like, I mean, if you're a very large card store, you probably have this capability, right? Like, if you can't tell me SCG has no pull in things, right? Like, just being big does it. Now, should all the small ones unionize? Like, I don't know what that does.
I mean, that's just like TCG player, right?
Amos Worth. With Assassin's Trophy coming out just after Settle the Wreckage and Field of Ruin, is WotC trying to encourage people to play more basics in Modern?
Yes.
Probably, yeah. And providing answers for some of the really powerful non-basics we have in older formats.
Yeah, I think WotC's trying to prevent everyone from playing 5-color good stuff. And they always come up with new ways to incentivize people to play monocolor decks or just 2-color decks, and forcing you to play basics and things like that as well.
It's all just part of the conspiracy where if they print enough of these types of cards that people play a bunch of basics, then you can't complain about Blood Moon anymore because you're already playing basics.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm playing Basic Mountain and Blood Moon. D Jazzy, since neither WotC nor Hasbro has experience or focus on competitive esports, do you think another company might be better buying, promoting, and monetizing the game? AKA, should WotC/Hasbro sell MTG?
Oh, they're never going to.
It makes them so much money. I don't think that that's something that will happen.
They're never going to.
It'd be better off with a partnership.
Yeah, but it's kind of happening with Star City Games, right? Star City Games is its own competitive circuit, and they run things differently, right? This is, the competition is that versus the Pro Tour and Grand Prix. So it's kind of happening today.
Well, like, I would love to see something like that happen. And I think to some extent they kind of did that with coverage with Channel Fireball by making them like the exclusive GP provider content people. But they're not making the Magic cards. For all the things that Wizards does bad and doesn't have experience in, they are pretty good at making Magic cards. So as far as like actually selling the game of Magic, that seems pretty unlikely to me. Partnering with someone to do the esports end, I think that could be a good idea.
Doug Whitaker, what is everyone's favorite way to play Commander? And who is your favorite all-time Commander?
Oh, well, I like drawing cards and not casting my Commander. I don't know what my favorite Commander is. I don't know if I actually have a favorite Commander because I never cast it anyway, or rarely cast it anyway.
My favorite of all time was Raphaelos.
Ooh.
Because I like casting big things. Namely Terastodon, so I can give everybody elephants.
Is Raphaelos banned now?
Yeah.
I like to play fair decks, like always. I like to win through combat, and my favorite...
You're an Isamaru fan.
No, I know. I can't do weedies. they gotta be big. They gotta be big. All-time favorite commander? I don't know. I like Brigid. Even though Brigid is not that good. I have a soft spot for mono white tribes, mono white bad tribes. So Brigid is pretty near and dear to my heart.
If you want to see Bridget in action, tune into next week's Commander Clash.
Volroth's back. Could a rule change to require control of a land of a given Phyrexian mana type in order to pay life fixed Phyrexian mana? I.e., you need to control a swamp to cast Dismember for 1 mana and 4 life.
Yes, I think that's what they're not going to fix it now, but I think that's what they should have done. Make it like Invigorate and the old cycle of free spells where you do need a land of the proper color of mana, but then you can cast it for free. Like, I don't know if that would 100% fix it, but it would go a long way towards making it fairer.
Does that really fix it? Yeah, you can't just jam into every deck, but, all the blue decks would still play Gitaxian Probe, and they would still have their island.
So, none of the Phyrexian mana stuff got banned when it was in Standard. Probe is now banned, and I think that is just more of a design mistake-ish, I guess, since most of the decks that played it had access to islands anyway. Like, there were just a few degenerate combo decks that played it. I think that it would certainly make it more balanced, but, fixing it, it would still just be too good.
I think I really dislike how they break the color pie. I think that's one of my biggest gripes with Phyrexian mana, how, Mutagenic Growth gives your, mono blue deck a pump spell. So I feel like it would help.
That's true.
It would help on that end. Whether or not it actually becomes unbroken in terms of gameplay, I don't know, but I would feel more comfortable if my mono blue black deck couldn't dismember a creature on turn 2 or whatever.
All right. One epic
play Watery Grave.
One epic pug. One deck building heuristic I've been taught in Standard is this. If you're playing mostly non-creature spells, just go all in and take out as many creatures as possible. That way you blank opposing removal. Is that a good heuristic?
Sort of.
Yeah, perfect answer.
I think...
Would you guys like to elaborate on sort of?
Go ahead, Chris. You can go first.
It depends on, the texture of the deck, right? So, if your non-creature spells are, Burn and Doomblades, you still need creatures to end the game. But if your non-creature spells are, counterspells, card draws, and planeswalkers, then yes, if you can get rid of the creatures and play, more of those similar type effects, you should. But you do always have to keep in mind that you still have to be able to win the game.
Yeah, that's...
So if your deck's built around Teferi, you could probably get away with slimming the creatures down as low as possible. But if your deck is, built around Wizard's Lightning and Lightning Strike, no, you can't just put a bunch more burn. You got to play more creatures. Even the burn deck in Modern still has, 12 to 18 creatures in it.
Yeah, I think that is exactly what I was thinking. You do got to be able to close out the game. So there's, if you're playing, you sometimes need your big finisher to kill the opponent. But one thing that I think I try to avoid, and I think is generally a good rule, is if you're playing that random control deck that doesn't have many creatures, and you're playing, a single creature in that deck, a Burwall or whatever, a Llanowar Elves or something, you gotta think, your opponent's playing removal, because Standard deck's playing removal, so that creature, if you don't have any more targets, it's gonna die roughly 100% of the time, because your opponent, sure, maybe they don't want to cast a 3-mana removal spell on your random thing, but if you literally have no other targets, it's gonna die anyway, so I feel like it's good to try to minimize that, but you, like Chris said, you still do need to be able to close out the game, but I would definitely avoid playing at one random utility creature in a deck that doesn't have to, because it's just going to die every time.
Yeah, the creatures have to have a purpose, right? So a good example was Torrential Gearhulk and the blue-white control decks. Yes, it makes their removal live, quote-unquote, in game 1, but half the time that removal was Vraska's Contempt, so it could also hit your Planeswalker, so it gives you some protection there, and you're getting value out of the card, so a good, for now, Dream Eater would be a good example of a creature that I would use in a deck where I only want a few creatures and a bunch of spells.
All right, Ronald Foster Jr. How much would it change the game if players were allowed to pay 2 generic mana to draw a card at any time? Not from the card's ability, but a rule change, hero powers.
That would hugely change the game.
Yeah, it would basically break the balance of the game. So the reason that works in particular in Hearthstone is because everybody's guaranteed one resource per turn and you have a cap on your resources. Whereas in Magic, like if at any time we could just pay 2 mana to draw a card, like the Llanowar Elf Circuitous route deck is going to be better than basically anything else in the entire game.
Yeah. But I do like that aspect of Hearthstone where you're always doing something every turn, because you're always accruing mana and you always have a hero power to use. And you don't have those weird, Magic games where you're like, land go, or I didn't draw land, go, and like nothing progresses and you slowly die.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I feel Magic has done a pretty good job with lately is designing cards that are flexible. So split cards are a good example where you have like a cheap effect or an expensive effect where it gives you something to do in the early game if you're stumbling and something different to do in the late game when you have more mana. A good example of that mechanic that I think is like one of the best mechanics that they've designed is Monstrous, where it's like on these creatures that you're able to play, Fleece Mane Lion for 2, Polukranos for 4, but then they still have some utility as the game goes late where you're able to do something with your mana if you're screwed, but can also do something with your mana if you're flooded.
I think another great way that they have moved towards fixing that is like making Scry evergreen. We had Cycling Return. That's another one of those mechanics. Surveil is a similar one. So there are mechanics, like having the cycling lands in Standard was such a huge deal because that like eliminates some dead draws in the late game where if it was a normal land, you're just like land, go, I'm not doing anything. But with things like cycling lands, Scry becoming more prevalent, it does help even out some of those variance issues, I think, in a way that's still on point for Magic.
All right, last question. Urker Asylum. Ravnica on Arena has been pretty fun. I'm still annoyed with the ranking system. If I have a grindy close game and I lose almost all of the rank I built up. When I win, my meter goes up only a little bit. Doesn't seem proportionate. Thoughts?
So, I mean, I don't understand exactly how the system works. I don't know if it is exactly functioning right. That's been like a big point of confusion, but it's based on the ELO system. And in the ELO system, if you lose to someone that is ranked much lower than you, you will drop a ton. You can even see this if you check your rating on Magic Online, which is a lot more clear. But if you have a high rating and lose to someone with a low rating, you're going to lose a ton of points. But if you have a high rating and you beat someone with a low rating, it doesn't really do hardly anything. You won't gain much of anything. So it might be people misunderstanding the ELO system, or it might actually be that there's some weirdness with the rankings that is still going to be ironed out on Magic Online.
Yeah, the system's like inherently broken when you play events because in normal cases, you're supposed to be matched up with someone with your own ELO. And if you're playing constructed, you're supposed to have, decks of the right power level. So when you play, if you play someone who's much lower than you, you would lose a lot more. That makes sense. But what happens in constructed events is you're matched by records. So let's say you're LSV, but your pool was a pile of garbage, right? And then you're playing, I don't know, say me, bad player, but I had like the greatest pool ever. When we meet in the 6-0 bracket and I win, like LSV will lose so much ELO, right? So it makes it so that you can never climb if you play events. So if you want to climb your ranks, you have to actually just play the actual ladder and not the events. So if you want to be masters or whatever, you have to only play the ladder and not actually events, so you don't get matched up with low ELO players and then lose to them and undo all your hard work. So it's currently broken, and I don't know if they have any plans to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, like ELO and MMR is just like always such a mystery to me. I just try not to think about it and just play.
Also, the good news is it doesn't do anything. Like, there's no, other than personal pride or whatever, like, you don't
my
get
self-worth
anything based on... And if your self-worth is based on your Magic Arena rank, you have other issues.
This is the whole basis of gaming, Seth. This is the whole basis of gaming.
Yeah, I mean, at some point there has to be like top X gets invited to a tournament and the winner of that tournament can play on the Pro Tour. Like, at some point that's probably going to happen, so fixing it now should be pretty important.
You know what I really want? I want like the top 10 players each season gets an icon that's the top pro of that season. So like, you grind for a month and you get to be the Reed Duke avatar. That would be hilarious.
Or it could just be like the world champion from that
Yeah.
year. Like you just get to be Javier.
I like it. I think they should incorporate more of this because it's like free, right? Like we should have more fun things to grind out and to show who we, like, oh, this is a Team Channel Fireball Ice icon or something, right? And I support this team. Like they have a lot of opportunities to incorporate that into Arena.
I still don't know why they didn't do that as a reward for people that helped in the closed beta. They gave people some of the Mythic Edition Planeswalkers, which was nice, but they also made it so anyone can wildcard for the Mythic Edition Planeswalkers, so you don't actually... It's not like you got something exclusive for being a beta tester. So I wish they would have given you some like exclusive icon or avatar for being a beta tester. I think that would have been sweet.
Yeah.
Or a deck sleeve.
Ooh,
Oh yeah, deck sleeves.
Yeah, different like play board or whatever, play battlefield would be sweet too.
Yeah, that was one of the things they had in Hex, another digital game that I played for a bit. It's on the decline now, but that's neither here nor there. But they had, through their Kickstarter and in the beta and alpha, like people that took part of that like got stuff in game that you would play against somebody and they would have the alpha tester sleeves. So like, oh man, this guy's been playing since it was an alpha. Like that kind of stuff is really cool.
It's like a modern day DCI numbers. You have like a 3-digit DCI number. I'm scared.
Yeah.
All right, that's all our fish mail for this week. Thanks to everyone who sent them in. You can send them to MTG Goldfish on Twitter with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I think that brings us to the end of episode 191 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Chris, Richard, thanks for hanging out. It's always fun. Thank you to everyone for listening. Also, thank you to Spikes Academy for supporting the show. Check them out, spikesacademy.com. 10% off for the cold goldfish. So, we'll be back next week. We'll have actual tournament results for our new standard format to talk about and whatever else happens in between. So, until then, have a wonderful week. And this is the Crew signing out.